My son screamed at me in front of 25 people during Christmas dinner. "Mom, if you want to keep living here, pay rent like any other tenant, or get out." What Matthew did not know was that this penthouse of almost 2,000 square feet on the Gold Coast of Chicago, where he boasted of living thanks to his brilliant career as an architect, was mine. The gray Cadillac he parked every night in the garage was mine. The credit card his wife Audrey used to buy designer bags on the Magnificent Mile was mine. Everything, absolutely everything was mine. I am Sarah Vance. I am 64 years old. And this is the story of how my silence almost destroyed my only son, and how breaking it saved him. Current scene. The aroma of roasted turkey filled every corner of the penthouse. I had been working since 6 in the morning preparing the apple pie, the homemade pecan bars, and the candied yams that Matthew had loved since he was a child. 25 people were settling into the dining room. Cousins, uncles, friends of Matthew, colleagues of Audrey. The table sparkled with fine china and crystal glasses reflecting the lights of the Christmas tree. I moved from the kitchen to the dining room, serving clearing plates, refilling glasses with a California Zinfandel. My apron was stained with gravy, my hair pulled back in a simple bun. My hands, wrinkled by the years, trembled slightly as I held the heavy tray. "Sarah, sit down for a moment," said my cousin Susan with that condescending smile I knew so well. "You have done enough." "I am fine," I replied, forcing a smile. From my position by the open kitchen bar, I could see the entire dining room. Matthew was seated at the head of the table in his white linen shirt and that luxury watch Audrey had given him last year. He was talking to his cousin Daniel about his latest project, a corporate building downtown. "This month has been crazy," said Matthew, gesturing with his wine glass. "The client is pushing hard on the deadlines. But hey, the salary of a senior architect in Chicago is not bad at all. It is enough to maintain this place, the car, and everything else." Audrey, seated beside him, smiled with satisfaction. She wore a red dress that probably cost more than a nurse's monthly salary. Her perfectly manicured nails shone as she caressed Matthew's arm. "And yet," added Audrey, raising her voice a little, so everyone could hear, "the bills never stop. This house, the decoration maintaining this lifestyle. Nothing is free in this city." Several heads nodded. My Uncle George cleared his throat. "He is right. Rents around here are impossible. At least $4,000 or $5,000 a month for a decent apartment." "Exactly," said Matthew, straightening in his chair. "That is why I always say you have to work hard. No one gives you anything in this city." I felt a knot in my stomach, but kept serving the turkey. No one looked at me. No one noticed how I gripped the spoon harder than necessary. The conversation continued revolving around money, the cost of living, and how hard it was to make ends meet for people who had just ordered their third bottle of wine, worth nearly $200. And then it happened. Matthew wiped his mouth with his napkin, took a sip of wine, and looked directly at me. In his eyes was something I recognized immediately, the same determination his father Anthony had when making important decisions. But this time, that look brought nothing good. "Mom," he said in a tone that cut through all conversations, "since we are talking about the house." The dining room fell silent. 25 pairs of eyes turned toward me. "I have been thinking," he continued, placing his glass on the table with a soft but firm tap, "that if you want to keep living here with us, you should contribute a portion of the rent like any adult sharing a space." Time stopped. "It is only fair, right?" he added, looking for approval in the other's eyes. "We are all adults. And if it is difficult for you with your widow's pension, well, maybe it would be better if you looked for something more suited to your possibilities." Audrey nodded, taking a sip of her wine. "Nowadays, we must all be responsible for our expenses, even if we are family. In fact, precisely because we are family, we must be honest about these things." I looked around the table. My cousin Susan avoided my gaze. My Uncle George coughed again and focused on his plate. A couple of guests nodded slightly as if saying it makes sense. My Aunt Patricia even murmured, "Well, yes, at our age we must be more independent." No one, Not a single person raised their voice to defend me. No one said, "How can you talk to your mother like that?" No one asked, "Are you really going to kick her out on Christmas?" The silence was so thick I could hear the ticking of the wall clock in the kitchen. I felt as if 28 years of sacrifices, of sleepless nights, of building a legacy so my son could have a future, evaporated with the penthouse air conditioning. Carefully, I left the spoon on the counter, folded my napkin, and placed it next to my untouched plate. I stood up, feeling my knees creak. "Thank you for coming," I said, with a voice so serene it surprised me. "This will probably be the last Christmas dinner I spend in this house." Matthew blinked, confused. "Mom, you do not have to be so dramatic. We are just talking about being realistic with—" "You are right, Matthew." I interrupted him, looking him directly in the eyes. "It is time to be realistic." I turned and walked down the hallway leading to my bedroom. Behind me, I heard uncomfortable murmurs, chairs, dragging someone trying to resume the conversation with a "Who wants dessert?" I closed my bedroom door. The sound of the latch was soft, but in my mind it echoed like the definitive closing of a complete chapter of my life. Flashback 30 years ago. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the small room that had been my refuge for the past 3 years. A twin bed, an antique wardrobe, 2 picture frames on the nightstand. I picked one up. Anthony and I, the day we inaugurated our first building in Wicker Park. I was 34 years old. I wore a simple floral dress and my hair pulled back. Anthony held the ceremonial scissors ready to cut the ribbon. Behind us, a modest 4-story building. Our first dream came true. Reflective narration. How did I get here? How did I go from being a young mother with a dream to a widow supported by her own son? Let me tell you the truth. The truth no one at that table knew. Flashback continues. 1989. Anthony and I met in a small town in Texas. I was 19 years old. I worked cleaning houses. He was a bricklayer. He was 22 years old and had the most hard-working hands I had ever seen in my life. We married 6 months later in a simple ceremony at the town church. The honeymoon was a weekend on the Gulf Coast. When Matthew was born, we lived in a studio of about 300 square feet in a humble neighborhood of Chicago. Anthony worked in construction 12 hours a day. I did bookkeeping for small businesses from home with Matthew sleeping in a crib next to me. Every dollar we earned went into a metal box hidden under the bed. No luxuries, no vacations, just work, saving, and a dream. Buying our own property. It took us 12 years. 12 years counting pennies. 12 years refusing dinners with friends because we had already eaten. 12 years of secondhand clothes from thrift stores. 12 years watching Matthew grow in that tiny studio, sleeping with us until he was 7 because there was no room for another bed. In 1995, we finally bought our first apartment, about 400 square feet in Wicker Park for $45,000. We renovated it ourselves. Anthony installed the plumbing. I painted the walls. Matthew, at 6 years old, passed us the tools. We rented it to a young couple for $800 a month. That money went into another metal box, and then into another apartment, and another. Anthony had a gift. He could see an abandoned building and visualize exactly how to turn it into something beautiful. I had another gift. I could make every dollar multiply in the ledger books. In 2003, we bought our 5th building. The lawyer suggested creating a company to handle everything legally. Anthony thought of the sparrows he always saw on the power lines of Wicker Park. Small but tireless. Vance Properties, he said, like our last name, but with wings. Together, we survived the financial crisis of 2008. When others sold out of panic, we bought with strategy. Buildings in Lincoln Park, apartments in the Loop Commercial, spaces on the Gold Coast. By 2015, Vance Properties had 47 properties in its portfolio. And then, on a rainy Tuesday in November of 2017, Anthony put his hand to his chest while reviewing some blueprints in our office. Sarah was the last thing he said before falling. The hospital informed me it had been a massive heart attack. He did not suffer, said the doctor, as if that consoled me. Return to the present. I opened the nightstand drawer and took out a manila folder. Inside were documents no one in this house knew existed. Articles of incorporation of Vance Properties, LLC, shares. Sarah Vance, 85%, Executive Director, James Turner, property deeds, penthouse, Gold Coast, Astor Street, number 234. Owner, Vance Properties, LLC, vehicle gray Cadillac, license plate AE6, registered to Vance Properties, authorized user, temporary, Matthew Vance, additional credit card, primary account, Sarah Vance. I turned the pages slowly. Each document was a reminder of what I had built and what I had allowed my son to believe was his. Flashback 3 years ago. Matthew had finished his architecture degree. He got a job at a respectable firm. His salary was about $4,000 a month. Not bad for a recent graduate, but not enough for the lifestyle he had always dreamed of. One day, he came to visit me at the Vance Properties office. I kept a low profile working from a small room in the back of the building, while James handled public meetings as CEO. Mom said Matthew sitting across from my desk, "I want to be independent." I found an apartment for rent on the Gold Coast, but it costs $3,500 a month. With my salary, it is possible, but I would be very tight. I looked at him. He had inherited Anthony's eyes, that determination, but also a certain youthful naivety that still did not know the true price of things. I opened the internal system of Vance Properties on the computer. "We have an empty penthouse on Astor Street," I told him. 2,000 square feet, remodeled 2 years ago. Market value $7,000 a month. Matthew's eyes went wide. "Mom, that is way out of my budget." "I will rent it to you for $2,000, I told him. "It is an internal discount. Family and employee rate." "Really?" His face lit up. "But do you not need it? I am fine in my apartment in Wicker Park." I lied. Actually, that apartment was also mine, but he did not know. Besides, I preferred to live simply. He was young. He deserved a good place. He signed the lease that same week. On the paper it said Tenant Matthew Vance, Landlord Vance Properties, LLC. He never asked who was behind Vance Properties. 2 months later, Audrey appeared in his life, a fashion influencer with 50,000 followers on Instagram. I saw her posting photos of the penthouse. My architect boyfriend has impeccable taste for spaces. When they got married, I gave him something else, an additional credit card linked to my primary account. Only for emergencies, I told him, in case you need something important. Something important turned into dinners at expensive restaurants. Emergencies were $500 bags. I received the statements every month and paid them in silence. $600 here, $1,200 there. $3,400 on a trip to Miami. I never said anything. And when Matthew asked to use one of the company cars to present himself better to clients, James signed the authorization that I approved from my small office. "It is temporary," I told James, "only until he saves money to buy his own car." 3 years later, temporary was still his gray Cadillac. Decision in the present. I took out my cell phone. It was 11:47 at night, right on Christmas. Outside fireworks from some private party illuminated the Chicago skyline. I dialed a number I had on speed dial. "James, it is Sarah. Sarah, Merry Christmas. Is everything okay?" His voice sounded worried. James Turner had been Anthony's right hand, and after his death, he became my confidant and the only one who knew the whole truth about my role in Vance Properties. "I need you to prepare all documents related to Matthew first thing tomorrow morning," I told him, looking at the photos on the wall. The lease agreement, the vehicle authorization, the additional credit card statements. There was a silence on the other end of the line. "Are you sure, Sarah?" "Completely sure," I replied. "It is time my son learns the true meaning of the word independence that he likes to use so much." I took a suitcase out of the closet. A cloud of dust came out when I opened it. It still had tags from a trip to New York that Anthony and I had planned before his death. We never made it. I started folding my clothes. I did not have much. 3 blouses, 2 pairs of pants, a sweater, underwear, my comfortable shoes. Everything fit perfectly in half a suitcase. I stopped in front of the closet mirror. A 64-year-old woman looked back at me, gray hair pulled back wrinkles around the eyes, hands marked by decades of work. I had spent almost 40 years building something important, and in the last 3, I had allowed my son to trample on that legacy while I served dinner in silence. Why did I do it? Why did I let him believe that lie? Because I wanted him to be happy. Because I wanted him to feel successful, capable, independent. Because I thought if I gave him everything, he would naturally be grateful. I was wrong. Silent love that sets no boundaries is not love. It is complicity with selfishness. I closed the suitcase. The sound of the zipper was definitive. I took my purse, put in my wallet, my phone, the keys to my other apartment, the real one, the one Matthew had never seen, and opened my bedroom door. The sound of laughter and music came from the dining room. They had resumed the party. They probably thought I was crying in my room, that tomorrow I would come out regretful, asking for forgiveness for ruining their Christmas. I dragged the suitcase down the hall. The wheels on the hardwood floor made a screech that cut through the music like a knife. The conversation ceased. 25 heads turned. Audrey was the first to speak, with that condescending smile. "Sarah, do not be dramatic. No one is kicking you out. We are just having an adult conversation about responsibilities." I interrupted her. "You are right, Audrey. It is time for all of us to be responsible adults." Matthew stood up from the table, his cheeks slightly red from the wine. "Mom, where are you going?" "I did not mean for you to leave today. I just wanted you to understand that." "I understood perfectly," I said firmly from the door. "I understood that you think this house is yours, that the car is yours, that everything you have is thanks to your effort." "Because it is," Audrey intervened, standing up. "Matthew works hard. He gets up early. He works late. No one has given him anything." I looked her directly in the eyes. There was so much I could have said. I could have revealed everything right there. I could have taken out the property deeds and thrown them in her face. But I did not, because the best lesson does not come from words. It comes from consequences. "You are right," I said simply. "No one gives anything for free." "See you soon." I opened the penthouse door. Matthew took a step toward me. "Mom, at least tell me where you are going. Let me call you a cab." "It is not necessary," I replied. "I already ordered a car. But at least send me a message when you arrive, just so I know you are okay." I looked into his eyes. My son. The boy I had carried in my arms. The young man I saw graduate. The man who had just chosen pride over love. "When I consider it necessary to communicate, I will," I said softly. "Merry Christmas, Matthew." I closed the door behind me. The hallway of the building was silent, illuminated by cold LED lights. I dragged my suitcase toward the elevator. I did not look back. I did not cry. I simply breathed. For the first time in 3 years, I breathed without the weight of a lie crushing my chest. The elevator went down the 30 floors in silence. When the doors opened in the lobby, the night doorman looked up surprised. "Leaving Mrs. Vance." "So late." "Robert," I said, remembering his name. Although he probably believed I was just Matthew's mom. "Would you do me a favor?" "Of course. When they come to pick up the gray Cadillac in the next few days, the one in spot number 7, allow them access. They have authorization from the company." Robert blinked confused but nodded. "Whatever you say, ma'am. Outside." A black Lincoln was waiting for me. It was not a taxi. It was a Vance Properties car, driven by Michael, one of our trusted employees. "Good evening, Mrs. Vance," he said, taking my suitcase. "To the residential neighborhood apartment." I settled into the back seat. Chicago passed in front of the window. The illuminated streets, tourists walking even on Christmas shops closed with bright displays. This city, my city. I had conquered it dollar by dollar, brick by brick, contract by contract, and somewhere along the way I had become invisible in my own story. The car turned toward a quiet residential neighborhood very different from the bustle of the Gold Coast. That was where I really lived, an apartment of about 900 square feet in a 4-story building. No doorman, no luxuries. Michael stopped the car in front of number 23. "Do you need help with the suitcase?" "No, thank you, I can handle it." I went up the stairs. There was no elevator to get to the second floor. I opened the door with my key. The apartment smelled like a place rarely used, like those spaces that are opened only once in a while. It was my secret refuge, the place I came to when I needed to think work without interruptions or simply be Sarah Vance, businesswoman, instead of the mom supported by her son. I left the suitcase by the door and sat on the armchair. The silence was absolute, no music, no laughter, no son telling me to pay or leave. Just me and the decisions I would have to take at dawn. I took out my cell phone. I had 3 missed calls from Matthew. A message. "Mom, please tell me you are okay. I did not want you to leave like that. It was just a conversation. Talk to me." I did not answer. Instead, I opened my laptop and logged into the Vance Properties system. I clicked on the folder. Assets assigned to Matthew Vance. The list appeared. Lease agreement, Astor Street, number 2, 34. Expires January 31st, 2024. Assigned vehicle Cadillac AE6. Temporary authorization. Additional credit card. Limit $10,000. Link to primary account. 3 clicks. That was all I needed to change my son's life. Was I being cruel, vindictive? No. I was being a mother who finally understood that the greatest act of love is not giving everything, but teaching the value of everything. I closed the laptop. Tomorrow I would talk to James. Tomorrow the process would begin. That night I slept better than in 3 years. The office of Vance Properties occupied the 3rd floor of a modernist building on Michigan Avenue, right between 2 luxury stores. I arrived at 8:30 in the morning on December 27th. The receptionist, a young woman named Sophia, almost dropped her coffee when she saw me. "Mrs. Vance, we were not expecting you. Good morning." "Good morning, Sophia. Is James in?" "Yes." "He arrived half an hour ago. He is in his office." I walked down the hall. On the walls were photographs of our most emblematic buildings. In one of them, taken 5 years ago during the inauguration of a housing complex in Lincoln Park, Anthony appeared with his construction helmet smiling at the camera. By his side, out of focus, was me. No one knew who that woman was. To everyone, she was just another employee. I knocked on James' door. "Come in." James Turner, about 45 years old with gray at the temples and always impeccable, stood up when he saw me. "Sarah, please sit down." I did not sit immediately. I went to the window. From there you could see the entire avenue. The morning traffic tourists with MAP's office workers running to the subway. "Did you bring the documents?" I asked. James opened a manila folder on his desk. "Everything is here. But before continuing, I need to ask, are you absolutely sure?" "Once we start this, James." I interrupted him, turning toward him. "Anthony and I built all this in silence with humility. We never wanted to be the rich family that shows off, but at some point my silence stopped being humility and became a lie. A lie that allowed my son to talk to me as if I were a burden." "I know," he said softly. "I never agreed with keeping him in ignorance, but I respected your decision. It was my mistake, I admitted, and it is my responsibility to fix it." Finally, I sat down. James slid the folder toward me. I opened it. The first document was the penthouse lease signed 3 years ago, renewed automatically every year. Clause 2, EP3. The landlord may terminate the contract with 30 days' notice if they do not wish to renew. The second document was the vehicle authorization. Simple, direct. Vance Properties, LLC. Authorizes the temporary use of the vehicle Cadillac AE6. License plate 482KLM to Matthew Vance for company representation purposes. The authorization may be revoked at any time. The third was the credit card statement for the last 6 months. My hands trembled as I saw the numbers. High-end restaurant on the Gold Coast, $400. Louis Vuitton, Michigan Avenue, $3,000. Four Seasons. Hotel Executive Suite, $2,000. Trip to Las Vegas, $3,000. Designer furniture, $2,000. The list went on page after page of expenses totaling almost $50,000 in 6 months. Meanwhile, I kept wearing the same navy blue coat from 5 years ago. "Did you also bring Rachel?" I asked, referring to our lawyer. "She is waiting in the conference room." Rachel Martinez, a woman of 50 with a reputation for being ruthless but fair, had handled our legal affairs since Anthony died. When I entered, she already had her laptop open and several legal codes marked with yellow notes. "Sarah," she said, shaking my hand. "James put me up to speed. I am very sorry for what happened. I do not need condolences," I replied, sitting down. "I need legal solutions." Rachel nodded, appreciating my clarity. "Very well. We have 3 assets your son currently enjoys: the residence, the vehicle, and the credit card. Let us look at the options for each case," said Rachel. She opened a presentation on her laptop and turned the screen toward me. "Property. Penthouse on the Gold Coast. The lease is about to expire on January 31st, she explained. "Legally, you have the right not to renew it. You only need to send a formal notice 30 days in advance, which would be today, December 27th. And if he refuses to leave, then we start an eviction process. But honestly, Sarah, I do not think it will be necessary. When he receives the notification from a property management company, not his mother, the reaction will be different. And if he tries to find out who the owner is," Rachel smiled slightly. "Vance Properties, LLC is a limited liability company. The partners are not public. He would have to request formal information from the Secretary of State, which takes time, and by then the 30 days will have passed. Vehicle Cadillac AE6. This is simpler," she continued. "It is company property. He only has temporary authorization to use it. We can revoke the authorization immediately and request the return. How is it done? We send a formal communication requesting the return of the vehicle within a maximum of 48 hours. If he does not comply, we send a company employee with a tow truck and the spare keys." "Do it," I said without hesitation. "Additional credit card." "This is the simplest," said Rachel. "It is an additional card linked to your personal account. You can cancel it with a call. Immediate effect." I looked at the 3 documents in front of me. My son would receive 3 blows in a matter of days. He would lose his house, his car, and his unlimited access to money. "Is it not too harsh?" asked James quietly. "We can do it gradually. First the card, then the car, and later." "No," I interrupted him. "Gradual would be cruel. It would be like cutting off a finger each day instead of ripping off the bandage all at once. He needs to feel the full impact to understand the magnitude of his error." Rachel looked at me with something resembling respect. "You are stronger than I thought." "I am not strong," I replied. "I am a mother who was blind for 3 years and finally decided to open her eyes." We spent the next 2 hours drafting the documents. 1. Letter of non-renewal of lease. Dear Mr. Matthew Vance, Vance Properties, LLC, in its capacity as landlord of the property, located at Astor Street, number 234 Gold Coast, hereby notifies you that the lease agreement expiring on January 31st, 2024, will not be renewed. In accordance with housing law, you have the indicated period to vacate the property in the same conditions in which it was delivered. Sincerely, James Turner, Executive Director. Vance Properties, LLC. 2. Request for vehicle return. Dear Mr. Matthew Vance, the purpose of this letter is to inform you that the temporary authorization for the use of the vehicle Cadillac A6 license plate 482 KLM property of Vance Properties LLC is revoked as of this date. We request the return of the vehicle within a maximum of 48 hours at our facilities on Michigan Avenue 89. In case of non-compliance, we will proceed to recover the asset by corresponding legal means. Sincerely, Assets Department, Vance Properties, LLC. 3. Credit card cancellation. This only required a call to the bank. Rachel dialed on speaker. Chase Bank. Card department. "This is Laura speaking. How can I help you?" "Good morning," said Rachel. "I am calling on behalf of Mrs. Sarah Vance, account holder ending in 823. We need to cancel an additional card." "Of course. In whose name is it?" "Matthew Vance." "One moment. Please." "Yes, here it is. Do you wish immediate or scheduled cancellation?" Rachel looked at me. I nodded. "Immediate," she replied. "Perfect. The card will be blocked in approximately 2 hours. Anything else?" "Yes," I added, leaning toward the phone. "I would like to receive a detailed expense report for the last 12 months, please." "Of course, Mrs. Vance. We will send it by email during the day." We hung up. Rachel closed her laptop. "That is all. The documents will be sent today by certified courier and email. The card will be canceled before noon. And the car. When do you want us to recover it?" "Tomorrow," I replied. "Give him time to read the letter first. Let him understand this is serious." James leaned back in his seat. "And you? Where will you be when all this explodes?" "In my apartment," I said. "I do not plan to hide. If Matthew looks for me, he knows where the office is, but I am not going to make it easy for him. And if he goes to the press," asked Rachel, "millionaire mother kicks out her son. It would be a juicy headline." "Let him do it," I replied. "I have 28 years of documents showing exactly how I built this legacy, and I have 6 months of bank statements showing how he and his wife used it as a personal ATM. I stood up. My knees creaked slightly. 64 years. Sometimes I felt it all in my bones. "Thank you both. I know this is uncomfortable," Sarah said, James standing up. "Anthony would be proud of you. He always said true love sets boundaries. I wish you had listened to him sooner. I felt a knot in my throat. I wish I whispered." I left the office at 11:30 in the morning. The winter sun shone over Michigan Avenue. Tourists took photos in front of the landmarks. A couple argued about which restaurant to choose for lunch. Life went on. I stopped in front of the Louis Vuitton window display. On the central mannequin was a bag I recognized from the bank statements. $3,000. Audrey had bought it in October and showed it off on her Instagram with the caption, "When your husband spoils you." At that moment, my phone vibrated. A message from Matthew. "Mom, good morning. Where are you?" "I went by the Wicker Park apartment I thought was yours, but the doorman says a young couple lives there. Can you call me?" "I am worried." I put the phone away without answering. I walked toward a small coffee shop in Lincoln Park. One of those that do not have Instagram, just good coffee and honest sandwiches. I ordered a cortado and a pastry. The total $6. Audrey surely spent that on a single fingernail at the salon. My phone rang. It was James. "The emails have been sent," he said. "Matthew should receive them at any moment." "Perfect. Sarah, are you really okay?" "Yes," I replied, looking out the coffee shop window. "For the first time in 3 years, I am fine." I hung up and took a sip of coffee. Hot, strong, without frills, like the truth that was about to fall on my son. Day 1. December 28th, 9:15 in the morning, Matthew opened his laptop at the dining table of the penthouse. Audrey was still asleep. The night before, they had been up until 3 in the morning discussing Sarah's drama. "Exaggerated," said Audrey. "Your mom has always been dramatic. Tomorrow she will come back asking for forgiveness." But that morning there were no messages, no calls, just a strange silence that tightened his stomach. He checked his inbox. Between corporate emails and newsletters he never read, he saw a subject line that froze his blood. Formal notice. Lease agreement termination. Sender. Vance Properties Administration. His heart started beating faster. He opened the email with trembling hands. He read the first line, then the second. Then he had to read it 3 times because his brain refused to process it. "Will not be renewed. Vacate the property. January 31st, 2024. What he whispered. He searched for the phone number at the bottom of the email and dialed. It rang 4 times before a female professional voice answered. "Vance Properties Administration. Good morning." "Yes." "Hello. This is Matthew Vance speaking. I received an email about the cancellation of my lease. It must be an error. I always pay on time. I have never had problems with... One moment, Mr. Vance. Let me check your file. Matthew heard the typing on the keyboard. Every second was an eternity. Mr. Vance, there is no error. The owner decided not to renew the contract. It is their legal right under Clause 12.3. But why? Did I do something wrong? I do not have that information, sir. We only execute decisions of the owner. I need to speak with him. This makes no sense. Who is the owner? That information is confidential. If you wish to appeal, you can send a formal request to our office on Michigan Avenue. Michigan Avenue. I know that office. It is close to where I work. Can I help you with anything else? Yes. Can I continue renting when the apartment goes back on the market? Of course. You can apply like any other applicant. The market price is approximately $7,000 a month. Matthew almost dropped the phone. $7,000. But I pay. You pay $1,400, Mr. Vance, a preferential rate that will no longer apply. The line went dead. Matthew stared at the cell phone screen. $7,000. His monthly salary was about $4,000 after taxes. It was mathematically impossible. What is wrong? Audrey appeared at the door wrapped in an extremely expensive silk robe. Why are you shouting? We are being evicted, said Matthew with a hollow voice. We have to leave the apartment before January 31st. Audrey blinked as if he spoke another language. No, impossible. This is your apartment. It is rented, murmured Matthew. Always has been. But you pay on time. You have rights. Can they not simply? Yes, they can. And they already did. Audrey approached and read the email over his shoulder. Her face changed from confusion to disbelief and then to fury. This is because of last night, right? Your mom did this. Somehow she convinced the owner. I do not know. Matthew rubbed his face. But I have to find out. He took his jacket and the keys to the Cadillac. Where are you going? To the offices of Vance Properties. I am going to talk to someone face to face. This cannot be happening. 12:30 in the afternoon, offices of Vance Properties. Matthew parked the Cadillac in a nearby parking lot, $20 an hour, a fortune he usually did not care about. He walked quickly toward the building on Michigan Avenue. He had never been there before. The facade was elegant modernist with high windows and ironwork balconies. A discreet plaque said, Vance Properties, LLC, 3rd floor. He went up the stairs 2 at a time. When he arrived at the reception desk, a young woman greeted him with a professional smile. Good morning. How can I help you? I need to speak to the director, the manager, whoever makes decisions here, said Matthew, trying to keep calm. I am a tenant, and I just received a nonsensical eviction notice. My name is Matthew Vance. The receptionist checked something on her computer. Her expression changed slightly, almost imperceptible. But Matthew noticed. One moment, please. She got up and disappeared down a hallway. Matthew took the opportunity to look around. The walls were decorated with photographs of buildings. Matthew recognized some. The housing complex in Wicker Park, the offices in the Loop, and then he froze. In a large photograph in the center of the wall was his father, Anthony Vance, in a construction hard hat, smiling in front of a half-finished building. The plaque underneath said, Anthony Vance, co-founder, 1989, 2017, in memoriam. His father had been a bricklayer. He had never mentioned owning anything at Vance Properties. A man about 45 years old, impeccably dressed with gray at the temples, approached with his hand extended. I am James Turner, Executive Director of Vance Properties. I understand you have concerns about your lease. Matthew shook his hand automatically, but his mind was still processing the photograph of his father. Yes, excuse me, that photo. My dad worked here. James followed his gaze, and something resembling sadness crossed his face. Anthony was much more than an employee, he said softly, but that is another matter. Why don't we go to my office to talk? James's office. It had a view of all of Michigan Avenue. Matthew sat in a leather chair while James opened a file on his desk. Mr. Vance started James. I understand your concern, but the decision not to renew your contract is completely within the legal framework. The owner. Who is the owner? Interrupted Matthew. I need to talk to him. There was a misunderstanding. My mom. She said something inappropriate at Christmas dinner, and if somehow that reached the ears of the owner, your mother has nothing to do with this. Replied James, although Matthew noticed something strange in his tone. It is simply a business decision. Then let me at least apply to renew. I can pay more. The market price is $7,000 a month, said James firmly. Can you pay that amount? Matthew opened his mouth. He closed it. The math was brutal and obvious. There are other apartments in Chicago, continued James, not without a certain compassionate tone. I suggest starting to look soon. The market in January is competitive. Matthew stood up, feeling dizzy. This is not right. Something is not right here. On his way out, he looked again at his father's photograph and then noticed something he had not seen before. In the background, slightly out of focus, was a woman in a simple dress with her hair pulled back. She was holding a folder and talking to a man in a suit. Something about her posture seemed disturbingly familiar. 2:15 in the afternoon, shopping center on Michigan Avenue. Audrey had decided that a little shopping would be the solution. While Matthew dealt with the apartment thing, she would stop by for the dress she had seen for the New Year's party. In line to pay, she took out the silver card she always used, the same one that never had a limit, the same one that made the saleswomen treat her like royalty. She swiped the card through the reader. Declined. Can you try again? Asked Audrey with a tense smile. The cashier tried 2 more times. Declined. Declined. I am sorry, ma'am, said the cashier. The card does not go through. Do you have another method of payment? People in line started to murmur. Audrey felt her cheeks burning. It must be a system error, she said quickly, putting the card away. I will come back later. She left the store with her heart beating wildly. She immediately called the bank. Chase Bank. This is Mary speaking. How can I help you? My card was declined, said Audrey, trying to sound calm but authoritative. I need to know what is happening. It is the card ending in 4829. One moment. Can you give me the name of the account holder? Audrey Ruiz Vance. I see here that this is an additional card. The primary holder is Sarah Vance. Audrey felt as if ice water had been thrown on her. My mother-in-law. Yes, ma'am. And the card was canceled yesterday at the request of the holder. Canceled, that is correct. It stopped being active at 2:32 in the afternoon. Anything else I can help you with? Audrey hung up without answering. Her hands were shaking not from sadness, but from rage. She dialed Matthew immediately. What happened? He answered, exhausted. Your mother. She canceled my card. Which card? The one I use, the one always. How dare she? Matthew took a second to answer. His voice changed. Audrey, that card is not yours. It is an additional one from my mom. You said it was ours, that the company gave it to you as a benefit. I thought, no, Matthew. Either you lied or you were too idiotic to know the truth. Audrey, calm down. We can fix it. I have my own card. We can use... Your card has a limit of $2,000, she spat. Do you know how much I spend a month? Do you know how much it costs to maintain my image, my social media, my life? Maybe that is the problem, murmured Matthew. What did you say? Nothing. Forget it. I'm going home. We have to talk. Audrey hung up and stood in the middle of the mall, surrounded by other people's bags, bright displays and things she could no longer have. For the first time in 3 years, Audrey Ruiz felt poor, and she hated that feeling with every fiber of her being. Day 2. December 29th. 8 in the morning, Matthew woke up with an intense headache. He had spent the whole night arguing with Audrey. She wanted him to do something to talk to his mother to fix this. But how? His mother did not answer. He did not know where she really lived. And every time he tried to think clearly, the image of his father on the wall of Vance Properties returned to his mind. At 8:15, the doorbell rang. Matthew opened the door, expecting the delivery guy with breakfast Audrey had ordered, this time with visible disgust, paid with his card. But instead, he found two men in reflective vests, clipboards in hand. "Good morning, Mr. Matthew Vance. We are from the Assets Department of Vance Properties. We are here to recover the vehicle Cadillac AE6 license plate 4182KLM. Matthew blinked, confused. "Recover? That is my car." The older man opened his clipboard and showed him a document. "According to our records, the vehicle is property of Vance Properties, LLC. You had temporary authorization of use, which has been revoked. We need you to hand over the keys and sign the return form." "This is ridiculous," shouted Matthew, feeling the blood rush to his face. "That car was given to me 2 years ago. I use it for work. You cannot just come and take it." "Mr. Vance," said the man with professional patience, "here is the document." "The vehicle was never transferred to your name," said the man. "It was always property of the company. Here is your signature. Authorizing temporary use for representation purposes." He showed him a sheet, and there it was, Matthew's signature, 2 years ago, on a document that clearly said temporary authorization. How had he not read it carefully? "And if I refuse," asked Matthew with a tense voice, "then we will proceed to recover it with a tow truck and the backup keys we have in our possession. Mr. Vance, this can be easy or hard. You decide." Audrey appeared behind Matthew, still in pajamas. "What is going on?" "They are taking the car," said Matthew with a defeated voice. "What?" Audrey pushed Matthew. "That car is ours. They cannot." "Ma'am, please," interrupted the employee, maintaining the professional tone. "We are just workers following orders. If you have any complaints, you can go to our offices." Matthew turned around, went into the apartment, and came back with the keys to the Cadillac. He dropped them into the man's hand without a word. "Thank you for your cooperation. Sign here, please." Matthew signed the return receipt. The men inspected the car, took pictures, and 10 minutes later, the gray Cadillac disappeared down the street. Matthew and Audrey stood at the building entrance, looking at the empty space in the parking lot. "Your mother," said Audrey, "slowly is destroying us. I do not understand." Matthew shook his head. "None of this makes sense. How can my mom have so much power over—" He stopped. An impossible, absurd idea began to form in his mind. The photograph of his father at Vance Properties, the word co-founder, the strange looks from James Turner, the fact that the apartment, the car, and the card were linked to Vance Properties. No. He whispered, "It cannot be. What cannot be asked? Audrey?" But Matthew was already running back to the apartment looking for his laptop, searching for the truth. Matthew typed in Google owners of Vance Properties. The first results showed basic corporate information. Vance Properties, LLC. Real estate management company founded in 1995. Executive Director James Turner. Portfolio 47 properties in Chicago and metro area. Estimated value approximately $35 million. He opened the images section. Photos of buildings, inaugurations, press articles appeared, and then he saw it. A photo from the year 2015 taken at the inauguration of a residential complex in Lincoln Park. In the foreground, James Turner cutting a ribbon, but in the background, crystal clear. His mother, Sarah Vance, in a tailored suit, talking to two men in suits who listened to her with evident respect. Matthew zoomed in on the image. The caption said, "James Turner, Executive Director of Vance Properties, at the inauguration of the Seaside Towers Complex. Project developed by the Vance family." The Vance family. With trembling hands, Matthew searched on LinkedIn. Sarah Vance, Chicago. There was no public profile, but searching among Vance Properties employees, an entry appeared without a photo. Sarah Vance, principal shareholder. No, it cannot be. Matthew ran his hands through his hair. Audrey approached to read. "Your mother owns Vance Properties." "I do not know." "Maybe." "Oh my God, Audrey, I think so." "Then that apartment is hers. And the car, hers, and the card. Hers. Everything is hers." Audrey collapsed onto the couch, pale. We have been living in her house, spending her money, and you. She looked at him with fury, you boasting to everyone that you made it on your own. My God, Matthew, you told her to pay rent in her own house. Matthew felt nauseous. I did not know. I swear to God I did not know. How could you not know? Did it never seem strange to you that an apartment on the Gold Coast cost $1,400? I thought. That it was a preferential employee price. She always lived so modestly with her old clothes, her small apartment. What small apartment let out Audrey a bitter laugh? I bet whatever you want that little apartment was also a facade. Surely she has a huge house in the suburbs that she never showed us. Matthew stood up abruptly and took the keys to the apartment. Where are you going? Asked Audrey. To find someone who will tell me the truth. 2:20 in the afternoon, St. Angel's Hospital. His grandmother Carol was in room 304 recovering from pneumonia. Matthew had not visited her in a week. He was too busy with parties and work. When he entered, she was awake reading a magazine. Upon seeing him, a shadow of disappointment crossed her face. Matthew? What a surprise. He approached and kissed her wrinkled cheek. He saw her fragile small under the sheets. How do you feel? Better. The nurses say I will be able to leave in a few days. That is good. There was an uncomfortable silence. Carol stared at him. You did not come just to ask about my health, did you? Grandma. Matthew sat beside her. I need you to tell me the truth about Mom. What truth? Vance, properties, the money, everything. Carol slowly closed the magazine. So you finally found out. She sighed a tired sound that seemed to carry decades. I knew it, son. I was there from the beginning. I saw your mother and father save every penny for years. I saw them buy their first apartment. I saw them build that empire brick by brick. Why did they never tell me, Grandma? She sighed deeper still. Because your mother wanted you to be strong on your own. She did not want you to grow up like those rich, spoiled kids who believe the world owes them something. But they lied to me. They did not lie to you, corrected Carol firmly. They just did not tell you everything, and that is very different. They let you believe you were maintaining the house, that you were taking care of her, said Carol with a soft but firm voice. And that made you feel good, right? Matthew opened his mouth to protest, but the words stuck in his throat. It made you feel important, continued Carol. The successful son taking care of his poor, widowed mother. Matthew looked down. Your mother continued. Carol could have lived in a mansion, could have retired 10 years ago. But she chose to live modestly. She chose to work every day. And she chose to give you advantages without you becoming dependent on them. Or at least she tried. What do you mean? Asked Matthew. Matthew, how much did you spend last month on restaurants, clothes trips? He did not answer. Your wife, Carol, almost spat the word, posted 47 photos last month showing off her luxury life. Bags that cost more than a nurse's monthly salary. While your mother, the woman who owns all that, wears the same coat from 5 years ago. I did not ask for any of that, said Matthew weakly. You did not ask for it, but you accepted it, replied Carol. And not only did you accept it, son, you boasted about it. You told the world that you had achieved all that. Matthew closed his eyes, feeling shame, and Tuesday night added Carol with a sadness that hurt in front of 25 people. You told your mother to pay rent or get out. Tears began to roll down Matthew's cheeks. I did not know, he whispered. And does that make it better? Asked Carol, taking his hand with her weak but firm strength. Your mother taught you with her silence, but you learned the wrong lesson. You thought her humility was weakness, that her generosity was an obligation. What do I do now, Grandma? Carol squeezed his hand. Learn what she wanted to teach you from the beginning. The true value of things, the effort it takes to build something, the difference between having privileges and deserving them. How do I start? From zero, son, like your mother and father did. Without her money, without her contacts, just you and your own effort. It is the only way you can ever look her in the eyes again. Matthew stayed there a good while holding his grandmother's hand, crying for everything he had lost and for everything he was just beginning to understand. 2 weeks later, January, Matthew stood in front of an old building in a working-class neighborhood. The paint on the facade was peeling. There was no doorman. The mailbox was rusted. "This is number 23, said the real estate agent, a young man with too much gel in his hair. 400 square feet, 1 bedroom, small kitchen, 8th floor. No elevator. How much? Asked Matthew. $850 a month, plus utilities. Audrey, standing behind with crossed arms, let out a bitter laugh. Is this a joke? It is a shoebox. It is what I can pay, said Matthew without looking at her. I cannot live here, groaned Audrey. Look at this place. What am I going to upload to Instagram? Living my best life in an apartment with no elevator. Then do not live here, replied Matthew, tired. The agent coughed uncomfortably. Do you want to see the inside? Oh, yes, said Matthew. No, said Audrey at the same time. Matthew looked at her for the first time that day. Audrey, I have to make a decision. I must hand over the keys to the Gold Coast apartment on January 31st. I can pay for this place. It is ugly. It is small. But it is what my real salary can cover. That does not work for me, said Audrey firmly. Matthew, this is not what I accepted when I married you. What did you accept? A contract where I kept you in eternal luxury. I accepted a life she rebutted, a life you promised. The successful architect, the nice apartment, the trips, the dinners. That life was not real, said Matthew, feeling something break inside him. It was a lie my mother financed while I believed the fairy tale. Audrey took off her sunglasses and looked at him coldly. Then find a way to get it back. Talk to your mother. Ask her. Forgiveness. Do what you have to do. But do not ask me to live in this. She looked at the building with contempt. Matthew shook his head. My mom does not answer my calls. She does not answer messages. I do not even know where she really lives. Well, find out, she snapped. Go to her office. Beg if you have to. I'm not going to beg her for money. Why not? Audrey raised her hands, indignant. Pride. Now you have pride. You did not have it when you spent her money on $400 dinners. The truth of those words hit him like a punch. Matthew took a deep breath. I am going to rent this apartment, he said finally. You can come with me, or not. You decide. He turned to the real estate agent. I want to see it. Audrey stayed on the sidewalk while Matthew went up the stairs. She did not follow him. When he reached the 8th floor, panting, legs burning, he understood that Audrey was right about one thing. This was not what they had had before. But for the first time in his life, it would be truly his. Chapter 6. The Awakening. The apartment in the working-class neighborhood was as depressing as it looked from the outside. The walls had water stains. The kitchen had appliances from the 90s. The bathroom had pink tiles, probably original from 1975. But was it his, or would it be after signing the contract? Matthew moved in on January 30th with 2 suitcases and a feeling of shame that weighed on his chest like a stone. Audrey had left 3 days earlier, returning to her parents' house in Miami, leaving a note that said only, "Call me when you are the man I married again." Matthew did not know if he had ever been that man. He spent his first day in the new apartment sitting on the floor. He still had no furniture. He looked at the cracked ceiling, doing calculations on his cell phone. Net salary, $2,800. Rent plus utilities, $920. Food, $300. Transportation, subway and bus, $60. Basic expenses, $100. Total, $1,420. He had $1,380 left a month. In his previous life, Audrey spent that on a single bag. Day 15, February. Matthew had started looking for extra work. His position at the architecture firm paid well, but not enough to get out of the emotional and economic hole he was in. One night, while eating instant soup in his empty apartment, the table would not arrive. until the following week he received a message from an unknown number. "Hello, Matthew. I am Andrew Valles. I run a small firm in Wicker Park, Chicago. I work on social housing projects. Your father worked on some of our first buildings. I have seen your portfolio. Would you be interested in talking?" Matthew responded immediately. "Yes. When?" Day 20. Meeting with Andrew. Andrew Valles' office was in an adapted industrial space in Wicker Park, Chicago. Exposed brick walls, desks made from repurposed wood, 5 young employees working on MacBooks surrounded by models and blueprints. Andrew must be about 50 years old, messy hair, and the energy of someone who still loves his work after decades. "Your father," he said, pointing to a photograph on the wall, "was one of the best bricklayers I have worked with. He understood the structure of a building like no one else, not just the construction, but the soul of a space." Matthew observed the photograph. There was his father, 20 years younger, smiling alongside other workers. "I did not know they had worked together years before he and your mother founded Vance Properties," said Matthew. Andrew looked straight at him. "Do you know what your father told me once? Buildings are not for showing off, they are for people to live with dignity." Matthew felt a knot in his throat. "I have a project," continued Andrew, "renovation of housing on the south side of Chicago. Old buildings we need to convert into affordable apartments. The budget is low, the salary is not high, but the work matters." "How much?" asked Matthew. $2,200 a month for 6 months. If it works, maybe more. It was less than he earned in his current job, but Matthew nodded. "When do I start, Andrew?" Andrew smiled. "Monday. Bring sturdy boots. You will be on site, not just in the office." Day 45, March. Matthew was getting up at 6 in the morning. He took the subway and then the bus to the south side of Chicago. He worked on dusty sites until 6 in the evening. He returned home exhausted. He ate something simple. He had learned to cook pasta omelets and basic salads and spent the nights drawing designs on his old laptop. One Saturday, his neighbor, an older woman named Rosa, knocked on his door. "Excuse me, young man, do you have a little sugar?" "I ran out." Matthew gave her a packet. She looked over his shoulder at the almost empty apartment. "You moved in a month ago, right? And your wife?" "I do not have a wife. I am in transition." Rosa nodded wisely. "Life puts you where you need to be, not where you want to be. If you want, come to dinner tomorrow. I will make spaghetti." Matthew went. Rosa's spaghetti reminded him of his mother's, and for the first time since Christmas, he felt something resembling the warmth of a home. Day 60, April. Audrey sent him divorce papers. Matthew signed them without fighting. A part of him felt relieved. She deserved someone who could give her the life she wanted, and he needed to discover who he was without the weight of so many expectations. Day 90, May. The project on the south side of Chicago was beginning to take shape. Matthew had designed a modular system that allowed converting old industrial buildings into housing of 500 square feet, with natural light and open spaces. Cost per unit, $75,000. Andrew was impressed. This could work on a larger scale. "Have you thought about presenting it to investors?" "I do not have contacts," admitted Matthew. "Well, I do," said Andrew. "Let me make some calls." That night, sitting in his small apartment now with a table, a mattress, and 3 chairs bought at IKEA, Matthew thought of his mother. In the last 3 months, he had tried to call her 47 times. All his messages remained unanswered. He wrote one more. "Mom, I do not expect you to forgive me. I do not expect you to give me back anything. I just want you to know that I finally understand. I am learning slowly, but learning. I love you, Matthew. Send." He did not expect an answer. But 10 minutes later, his cell phone vibrated. A message from a number he recognized as James Turner's. "Your mother received your message. She says she is fine and is proud that you have found honest work. Keep it up. When the time is right, she will look for you." Matthew read the message 5 times. She is proud. For the first time in months. He smiled. Day 1, 20 July, 6 months later. The heat of summer in Chicago made Matthew's small apartment in the working-class neighborhood feel like an oven. He had no air conditioning, just an old fan Rosa had given him. But there was something liberating in that sweat, earned honestly. In that discomfort that reminds you that you are alive, that you are fighting. Matthew woke up at 5:30 in the morning to take advantage of the cool hours. On his tiny table, surrounded by blueprints and models made with recycled cardboard, was something that had kept him awake for weeks, a project that could change everything. Dignified housing, Chicago, 120 modular apartments on an abandoned industrial lot on the south side of Chicago, total cost $9.6 million, price per unit $80,000, aimed at low and middle income families pushed out of the real estate market. It was not just architecture, it was social justice. His phone rang. It was Andrew. Matthew. Good morning. Are you sitting down? Yes. Why? Because I got you an audience. There's a group of investors interested in social impact projects. They want to see you on August 15th. Matthew felt his heart race. Who are they? I cannot tell you much. They are discreet but handle serious capital. If your presentation is good, Matthew, this can be real. How much capital? Enough to finance the entire complex. But you have to be impeccable. It is an opportunity that will not repeat itself. When he hung up, Matthew looked at himself in the bathroom mirror. 6 months had changed his face. He was thinner. He had dark circles from working whole nights. His hands were full of calluses from being on site. But his eyes had something they never had before. Purpose. August 1st. Preparation. Matthew spent the next 2 weeks preparing the presentation of his life. He worked on site by day and in his apartment by night. Rosa brought him coffee and omelets. Sometimes she stayed to watch him work. You remind me of someone she told him one night. Who? A woman I used to see on the subway years ago. She always carried blueprints under her arm and always had that same look you have. Determination mixed with fear. Matthew looked up. What did she look like? He asked. Older, elegant, but simple, replied Rosa. Once I saw her arguing with 3 men in suits over a contract. She shut all 3 of them up. Rosa smiled. She had the same jaw as you, the same way of furrowing your brow when you think. Matthew felt a knot in his throat. Was it my mom? I do not know, son. But whoever that woman was, she built important things. Like you now. August 15th. The address Andrew had given him was on Michigan Avenue in a luxury corporate building. Matthew felt a shiver as he approached. It was the Vance Properties office. He immediately dialed Andrew. There must be a mistake. You gave me the wrong address. There is no mistake, said Andrew with a soft voice. Trust me. Go in. Matthew stood in front of the building he had visited 6 months earlier in a state of absolute confusion. Now he returned with a worn portfolio, a second-hand suit he had bought for $45, his first expensive purchase in months, and 50 pages of dreams printed on paper. The receptionist recognized him. Mr. Vance, they are waiting for you in the conference room on the 4th floor. Who is waiting for me? She smiled mysteriously. Go up and you will know. The executive room. The elevator opened on the 4th floor, a level he had not seen before, a hallway with glass walls. Through them you could see Chicago stretching to the horizon, and at the end a wooden door with a plaque. Boardroom Office of the President. Matthew knocked. Come in. He opened the door and stood motionless. Seated at the head of the long oak table in a gray tailored suit, hair perfectly pulled back and hands clasped, was his mother, Sarah Vance. To her right, James Turner. To her left, Rachel Martinez, the lawyer. And in the back chairs, 3 more people with folders and laptops, clearly part of the executive team. Matthew said Sarah with a professional, calm voice, Please take a seat. Matthew could not move, could not breathe. Mom, I Here I am, President Vance, she said without harshness, but with firmness. And you are the architect, Matthew Vance, who will present a social housing project, correct? Matthew swallowed. Correct. Then sit down and begin. You have 1 hour. Matthew walked toward the projector with trembling legs. He connected his old laptop, whose screen had a crack in the corner he had tried to cover with tape. While the system loaded, he looked at his mother. She watched him with a neutral executive expression, as if evaluating a stranger. And in a way, he was. The Matthew she had expelled 6 months ago no longer existed. Good morning, he began, his voice barely trembling. My name is Matthew Vance. I am an architect specializing in social housing, and today I present a project that can change the life of 120 families in Chicago. The first slide appeared, a photograph of the abandoned lot on the South Side Ugly, full of trash, forgotten. This is a space the city has abandoned, he said, but I see potential. I see homes. I see dignity. For 45 minutes, Matthew presented every detail: modular design, optimized apartments of 500 square feet, recycled and sustainable materials, natural light common spaces, realistic budget construction cost per unit $75,000, final price per unit $80,000, margin 6.7% enough to sustain, not to get rich. Social impact 120 families with dignified housing creation of 40 jobs. Neighborhood revitalization, replicable model. His mother took notes. James nodded occasionally. Rachel checked numbers on her calculator. When he finished, there was silence. James spoke first. The budget is very tight. How do you guarantee there will be no overruns? Because I have spent 6 months physically working on sites, replied Matthew. I know every supplier, every price, every risk, and I added an 8% cushion for contingencies. Rachel intervened. And if the city does not approve the permits? I already had preliminary conversations with urban development. The project aligns with their social housing goals. I have 85% confidence in approval. An executive I did not know raised her hand. Why should we invest $9.6 million in a project with barely a 6.7% margin? There are developments that yield 25%. Matthew looked straight at her. Because this is not just money, it is doing the right thing. The city is living a housing crisis. Thousands of families are being expelled by inhuman prices. This project will not make us rich, but it will let us sleep peacefully. She wrote something down without showing emotion. Finally, Sarah spoke. For the first time in 45 minutes. Matthew, a personal question. Everyone in the room tensed up. Why this project? Why now? Matthew looked at her. 6 months of pain learning and growth fit in that silence. Because 6 months ago, I lost everything. My house, my car, my marriage, my pride. And in that process, I discovered something. Living in an $800 apartment in a working-class neighborhood, climbing 8 floors without an elevator every day, cooking instant soups because it is the only thing I can afford. That taught me more about architecture than 5 years of university. How asked, Sarah? Because I understood that buildings are not to impress, they are for living, and that people who most need dignified housing are precisely those who have least access to it. This project exists because I lived what they live, and why my father. His voice trembled. He taught me that the hands that build matter more than the papers that sign. Sarah closed her notebook. Thank you, Matthew. We will make a decision and inform you within 48 hours. That is all. You may leave. Matthew gathered his laptop, his papers, his worn portfolio. He walked toward the door. With his hand on the knob, he stopped. President Vance. Yes, regardless of the decision you make. Thank you. For every lesson, even the ones that hurt, he left without waiting for an answer. The deliberation. When Matthew left, Sarah remained seated in silence. The executives awaited her word. Opinions, she said at last. James was the first. The project is solid. The numbers are realistic and he has done his homework, but the margin is very low. One mistake and we lose money. Rachel nodded. Legally, everything is in order. The permits are viable, the contracts are clear. But I agree, the financial risk is high. The executive who had questioned the margin spoke. As pure investment, there are much better options. But she hesitated as a statement of values. As a legacy, this is powerful. Sarah looked out the window. From there, you could see the skyline, that symbol of resistance and sustained effort. Anthony, she whispered, what would you do? She knew the answer. Anthony would have signed without hesitation. He always said, buildings are not to accumulate wealth. They are for creating dignity. We approve the project, she said finally. Total investment, $9.6 million. Under what conditions? Asked James. Matthew will be the project director. He will report monthly to this board. He will have operational autonomy but strict financial supervision. Pause. And if he succeeds, we will offer him a permanent position at Vance Properties, not as my son, but as an architect who proved his worth. August 17th, 11 at night. Matthew was in his apartment unable to sleep when his phone rang. Unknown number. Yes. This is Matthew Vance speaking. Mr. Vance, a female professional urgent voice. We are calling from St. Angel's Hospital. Your mother, Sarah Vance, has been admitted. She suffered a cardiac episode. She is stable but asking for you. The world stopped. I am on my way. St. Angel's Hospital. Midnight. Matthew arrived sweating breathless after running from the subway. The receptionist sent him to the 3rd floor. Cardiology, room 307. James was in the hallway exhausted. What happened? Matthew took him by the arm. Stress. Exhaustion. Your mother has worked 16 hours a day. Since Christmas, concluded Matthew. Since she kicked me out. She did not kick you out, said James softly. She liberated you, but that does not mean it did not hurt her. Can I see her? James hesitated. She is awake. But Matthew, she is weak. Do not upset her. Matthew pushed the door carefully. The room was dimly lit. In the bed connected to monitors emitting regular beeps was his mother. For the first time in his life, Sarah Vance looked like what she was, a 64-year-old woman who had carried too much weight for too long. Mom, he whispered. She opened her eyes. A weak smile crossed her face. Hello, son. Matthew approached and took her hand. It was cold. What did you do? Why are you doing this to yourself? Because I needed to be sure, she replied with a tired voice. Sure of what? That when I gave you this opportunity, you would take it for the right reasons. She squeezed his hand weakly. Your presentation today, Anthony would have cried with pride. Matthew felt tears fall. Forgive me. For every cruel word, for every moment of ingratitude, for... Sarah lifted her free hand and touched his cheek. You are already forgiven. I forgave you the night you left. What took time was waiting for you to forgive yourself. I do not deserve this project. I do not deserve your trust. It is not about deserving, she murmured. It is about learning. And you learned, Matthew. Today I saw it in your eyes. You understand the value of effort, the weight of responsibility, the difference between privilege and right. A doctor entered. Mrs. Vance needs to rest, he said. Then he looked at Matthew. You can stay, but keep the conversation brief. When the doctor left, Sarah closed her eyes. The project is approved, she whispered. You start Monday. James will give you the details. You are going to be fine. I am going to be perfect. But you have to promise me something, whatever it is. Do not work like I worked. Do not carry everything alone. Ask for help when you need it. Trust your team. And Matthew, yes, live. Do not dedicate yourself only to building buildings. Build a life, one worth living. Do you promise me? I promise you, Mom. She smiled already, half asleep from the medicine. Good. Because I did not do all this so you would repeat my mistakes. I did it so you would build something better. 6 months later, February of the following year, The lot on the south side of Chicago had transformed. Where before there was trash and abandonment, now there were solid foundations, steel structures rising toward the sky, and the constant sound of the future being forged based on construction. Matthew was on site at 7 in the morning every day with his hard hat, his boots, and plans under his arm. His team was small but dedicated. 2 young architects and engineer and 3 foremen who had worked with his father years ago. Matthew called one of the workers. "We have a problem with Unit 23. The measurements do not match." Matthew climbed the scaffolding. He had lost the fear of heights weeks ago and checked personally. The error was minimal but could cause structural problems. "We are going to dismantle this section," he decided. Better to lose 2 days than compromise safety. It was not the first difficult decision, nor would it be the last. Monthly reports. Every first Friday of the month, Matthew presented progress to the Vance Properties Board. Sarah, completely recovered from her cardiac episode, presided over the meetings with a critical eye. Unit 45 is a week behind, she pointed out in the March meeting. "Problem with the window supplier," explained Matthew. "Already resolved. We will recover the time next week, and the budget. We are 3% under projection. I negotiated better prices with 3 suppliers." James smiled from his seat. Sarah only nodded and turned to the next page. But at the end, when everyone left, she stopped him. "Good job, Matthew." 3 words, but coming from her, were worth more than any salary. Crisis May. A rainy Tuesday. Part of a wall collapsed. No one was hurt, fortunately, but 3 workers had been there minutes before. The investigation revealed that a subcontractor had used cheaper materials to increase his profits. Matthew was devastated. "I should have supervised closer," he told Andrew, sitting on the site under the rain. "You cannot be everywhere," replied Andrew. "But you can learn from this." The next day, Matthew fired the subcontractor, implemented daily inspections, and added 2 quality supervisors. It cost him $35,000 from the contingency fund. When he presented the incident to the board, he expected reproaches. Instead, Sarah said mistakes happen. What matters is how we respond. You did the right thing. First family, August. The first finished unit was delivered in August. The Smith family, dad, mom, 2 kids, and a grandmother had lived in a shared apartment of 300 square feet in a rough area, paying $700 a month. When Matthew handed them the keys to their new home of 500 square feet, Mrs. Smith cried. "It is beautiful," she repeated, walking through the empty apartment, "but full of light. I never thought we could have something like this." The youngest son, Lucas, a 10-year-old boy, ran toward Matthew. "Did you design this?" "Yes. I want to be an architect when I grow up to make pretty houses for people like us." Matthew crouched down. "You know what? You are exactly the type of architect the world needs." He handed him his card. "When you are ready to study, call me. I will help you." That night, Matthew sent a photo to his mother, Lucas, standing in the entrance of his new house, with a gap between his front teeth and a smile that lit up everything. Sarah responded, "This is building a legacy. Well done, son." December 24th, a year later. Sarah was in the kitchen of her real apartment in a residential neighborhood. Not the penthouse, not a mansion. Just a comfortable home full of light, with photographs of Anthony on the walls and the aroma of roasted turkey filling every corner. Matthew arrived at 5 in the afternoon with 2 bags of food. "I came to help you with dinner," he said. "Do you know how to cook now?" Sarah replied, raising an eyebrow. "Rosa taught me the basics. Do not put me in charge of anything complicated, but I can peel potatoes without cutting myself." They worked together. Matthew peeling vegetables, Sarah preparing the sauce. The radio played carols. "How many are coming?" asked Matthew. 12. James and his family, Rachel, Andrew, Rosa, Grandma Carol, some company employees, and Lucas and his family. I invited them. Matthew felt a knot in his throat. "Mom, it is a family dinner," he said simply. And family is not always blood. Sometimes it is the people who build with you. The dinner, 8:30 at night. The table was smaller than the previous year. There was no fine china nor crystal glasses, just mismatched plates, common glasses, and food made with love. But the conversation was real. The laughter was genuine. And when Lucas showed Matthew a drawing, he had made a tall building with the word hope above. Everyone applauded. At 10 o'clock sharp, Matthew stood up. His heart beat fast. "I want to say something." The table went silent. "Exactly 1 year ago at a Christmas dinner, I said the cruelest words I've ever said to someone I love. I told my mother to pay rent in her own house. I humiliated her. I treated her like a burden." He looked at Sarah, who listened with shiny eyes, and she continued, "Did what only a truly wise mom would do. She did not yell at me. She did not explain anything. She simply let me fall. She let me lose everything. And in that fall, she taught me to fly." He turned to her completely. "Mom, I spent this year learning what you always knew, that the value of things is not in their price, but in the effort it costs to create them. That wealth without character is poverty in disguise. And that true love sometimes has to be tough to be real." He took an envelope from his pocket. "This is for you." Sarah opened it. Inside was a check for $16,800. "It is every dollar I spent with your card during those 3 years," explained Matthew. "It took me 12 months to save it, but it is yours, with interest." Sarah looked at the check and then tore it into pieces. "I do not want your money," she said softly. "I want your character, and that my son is priceless." She stood up and hugged him. For the first time in a year, mother and son held each other in an embrace that healed all wounds. The table erupted in applause. Grandma Carol cried. Rosa shouted, "Bravo!" James raised his glass. Lucas whispered to his mom, "When I grow up, I want to be like Matthew." Sarah smiled. "Then learn not just from his work, son. Learn from his heart." After dinner midnight, when everyone left, Matthew helped his mother clean. They washed dishes side by side in a comfortable silence. "The project inauguration is in March," said Matthew. 120 finished units. 100% occupancy." "I know," replied Sarah. "James keeps me informed." And after that, "Andrew offered me a partnership in his firm, but I also have other options." Sarah stopped washing and looked at him. "What do you want, Matthew?" "Not what I want, nor what others expect. What does your heart want?" Matthew thought carefully. "I want to keep doing this. Social housing projects that matter, but also," he hesitated, "I want to be close to you. I lost many years without really knowing who you are, without valuing everything you built. I want to recover that time." Sarah smiled. "Then I have a proposal. Vance Properties is expanding its social impact division. We need a director, someone who understands architecture, but also the heart behind it. Are you offering me a job? I am offering you a purpose, with a fair salary, without special privileges, but with the opportunity to change hundreds of lives. Are you interested, Matthew?" He looked her in the eyes. "Yes, but with one condition." "Which one?" "That we have dinner together at least once a week, without talking about work, just mother and son, recovering lost time." Sarah extended her hand. "Deal." They shook with formality. Then they laughed and hugged. Year 2029, inauguration of the Anthony Vance complex. Matthew was 40. He already had his first gray hairs, but his eyes shone with the satisfaction of someone who has found his place in the world. He was in front of a complex of 15 buildings on the outskirts of Chicago, Anthony Vance Housing Complex, 450 social impact homes. Beside him was Sarah, now 69, officially retired, but never absent. "Your father would be screaming with excitement," she said. "I know. Sometimes I feel he is here, watching everything. He always has been." In the audience were the families who had received housing. Lucas, now 15, and with a full scholarship to study architecture. Rosa in the front row with a handkerchief for tears. James, Rachel, Andrew, the whole team. And a new woman beside Matthew, Anna, a teacher in marginalized neighborhoods. They had been together for 2 years. She understood his passion. She shared his purpose. When Matthew took the microphone, he thought of his prepared speech. Then he ignored it and spoke from the heart. This project bears the name of my father, Anthony Vance, a man who believed that buildings are not to accumulate wealth, but to create dignity. But it is also the legacy of my mother, Sarah Vance, who taught me the most important lesson of my life. That true love sometimes has to let you fall so you learn to fly. He looked at his mother. 5 years ago, I was an arrogant man who believed he deserved everything without having earned anything. Today, I am just a man who tries every day to be worthy of the name he carries. These 450 homes are not my achievement. They are our achievement. Of every family that trusted the project, of every worker who put his sweat into every brick, of every person who believed that Chicago can be a place where everyone has a dignified home. And it is a promise. As long as I live, I will keep building. Not for my wallet, but for our collective future. The crowd applauded. Matthew cut the ceremonial ribbon. The doors opened and families began entering their new homes. Lucas approached Matthew. "Do you remember when you gave me your card 5 years ago?" "Of course." "I kept it." And now the boy showed an envelope. "I was accepted into the School of Architecture at Columbia University with a full scholarship. I want to design buildings like you." "Not like me," said Matthew, putting a hand on his shoulder. "Better than me. Learn from my mistakes and build a world we can only imagine." That night, terrace of Sarah's apartment. Sarah and Matthew were sitting on the terrace watching the lights of Chicago extending until they were lost. "Are you happy?" son asked Sarah. "Yes, more than ever. And Anna is different from Audrey. Real genuine. She loves my work, not my status. That is the difference between love and a transaction." Matthew nodded. Then he asked, "And you, Mom? Are you happy?" Sarah thought carefully. "I am at peace, and that is better than happiness. Happiness comes and goes. Peace remains." "And what gives you peace?" "Seeing that you became the man I always knew you could be. Seeing that the Vance name means something bigger than money. Knowing that when I am no longer here, there will be something worthy to inherit." "Do not talk like that. You are going to live 30 more years." Sarah laughed. "Maybe. But when my time comes, I want you to know something. That everything I built," she extended her hand toward the city, "is not my true legacy. You are the man you became. That is my masterpiece." Matthew's eyes filled with tears. "I do not deserve a mother like you. No one deserves love, Matthew," she replied softly. "Only we can honor it, and you have honored it." They stayed there while the city shone below them. A city of dreams built with effort of homes, earned with dignity of legacies that transcend generations. And in that moment, both understood that Sarah's silence, that silence that almost destroyed her family, had finally spoken. And her message was clear. True love is not demonstrated with easy gifts, but with difficult lessons. It is not measured in dollars spent, but in forged character. Sarah Vance had built a real estate empire, but her true inheritance was a son who finally understood that the value of a man is not measured by what he possesses, but by what he builds with his own hands. When the lights of the city go out and only the echo of our decisions remains, we understand that there is no inheritance greater than dignity, nor wealth worth the peace of a mother's heart. Sarah learned to set boundaries, and Matthew understood late, but in time, that true love is not measured in square feet or luxury cars, but in character. Thank you for staying until here. Truly, if this story made you reflect on money boundaries with children or the value of everything a mother builds in silence, leave me your like and subscribe so as not to miss the next stories. Tell me in the comments if you were in Sarah's place, would you have done the same with your son? And also, tell me from what city in the world are you listening to my story? Who knows? Maybe your words today will give a little light and hope to someone who needs it.